At the time of the Separatist Crisis, and in the years immediately prior to the Clone War, the Galactic Republic did not have a standing, centralized military in which to respond to growing anti-Republic sentiment and militarism. Appearing to be completely caught off guard and unprepared, the Republic was fortunate enough to have a secret military prepared for them a decade prior, which they would come to utilize in the Clone War against the Separatists. The lack of a unified Republic military was not a recent phenomenon of a mere few decades or even a few centuries leading up to the Clone War. Rather, it was an intentional policy that had been adopted by the Republic for roughly 1,000 years. In this video expose, I will explain why the Republic didn't have a military prior to the Clone War, due to a series of reforms that followed the new Sith Wars. Following roughly a millennium of devastating warfare, from 2,000 to 1,000 years before the events of A New Hope, the Republic and Jedi emerged victorious in their conflict with the Sith in the new Sith Wars. Believing that the Sith were eradicated completely from the galaxy, and not yet understanding the long-term plans of Darth Bane and his rule of two, the Republic underwent a period of unprecedented reforms, known as the Ruusan Reformation. Having only known war for the previous 1,000 years, and having seen an enormous increase in militarization by both the Republic and the Jedi Order, the Ruusan Reformation ushered in a new era, defined by a dismantling of Republic and Jedi military power. The Jedi abandoned virtually all of the military structures that they put in place over the previous millennium. The Order abandoned the use of battle armor, the use of all military ranks, and the position of Commander-in-Chief, and disbanded the entirety of their army, naval, and starfighter forces. Importantly, in a decision that would directly result in the Republic having no centralized military in which to fight the Clone War, the Republic also chose to downsize the entirety of their own army, naval, and starfighter forces. In an extraordinary and voluntary move, the Republic dismantled the centralized authority it had enjoyed throughout the previous centuries in the areas of political, economic, and military power. The formidable Republic Navy that had been established to fight the new Sith Wars was significantly reduced to a small assortment of task forces and fleets that could carry out rapid response missions. These Republic forces that remained following the Ruusan Reformation were placed under the Judicial Department and became known as the Judicial Forces. Due to the fact that the Republic's judicial forces were only a small fraction of the fleet that had existed before the reforms, they could really only perform patrols on the frontier of the Republic and respond to only the most significant crises that would erupt throughout the galaxy. Because the Republic no longer had the necessary military assets to carry out the defense of every system that was a member of the Republic, local defense was handed over to the planetary security forces, which before the Ruusan Reformation had always been no more than a supporting force for the much larger Republic Navy. Therefore, with the Ruusan Reformation having greatly reduced the Republic's centralized military, when the Separatist Crisis exploded roughly 1,000 years later, the Republic could only rely upon its much smaller judicial forces, who for a millennium had really only carried out peacekeeping missions and law enforcement duties. Most of these efforts had been carried out in tandem with the Jedi Order, as after their own significant reforms following the new Sith Wars, the Order was also reorganized under the command structure of the judicial forces. Although the Republic's judicial forces were sufficient during the era known as the Great Peace of the Republic, lasting for 1,000 years prior to the Clone War, during the final decades of the Republic, militarists and loyalists called for a remilitarization of the Republic's centralized military in order to confront the emerging Separatist crisis and the threat the Separatists represented to the Republic's authority. Ultimately, the Republic would not have to re-establish the military through the traditional means, as a Grand Army had already been established for them on Kamino. Once the Clone War started, the judicial forces were absorbed into the Grand Army of the Republic, and once again led by a galaxy-wide, centralized authority. So there we have it, why the Republic didn't have a military prior to the Clone Wars. We love making these videos, so why not subscribe for more fun Star Wars theories and discussions? Also, if you enjoyed the video, think about giving a like or leaving a comment. If not for me, for peacekeeping.